All right, if we are ready to get started, we do have an agenda this evening, and I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. And first up, let's do just a quick roll call and identify who is present this evening. And so John Jones.
Here.
Julie Radulovich. Present. Joseph Haynes.
Here.
Jason Henderson. Is not present. Ricky Jackson.
Present.
Patrick Santana.
Here.
Corey Reeds, which is actually, state your name. What was your?
Jake Spratt.
Jake. And Matt Duff is not present this evening, so we do have a quorum. Since we do have an agenda, actually the first item on our agenda before we jump into our general business is public comment. And is there anyone in the public who would like to speak at this moment? Sure.
Hi, my name is Pam Chadbourne, and a block and a half from here. I've seen a number of you in other meetings. So I really do want to thank you for participating in this committee. Financial reports are a little bit difficult to tackle when you think about it in the abstract. So I really appreciate your participation in this. We used to have a person on city council who was really good at the financial reports. But since he left, I don't think we had that kind of watchdog. And so, or knowledge about how to follow cost accounting and how to figure out the reports. So thank you very much for tackling this job on behalf of the city. It's a very important function. And thank you so much for doing it. That said, I did want to make a request, and this is for staff, which may or may not be crossing lines, but cost accounting is really important and I love it. And it's a tool, I think, for producing some more user-friendly reports, but it takes a little bit of programming to add some things together to make line items that for the regular citizen are traceable and trackable. And I'm not just going to say regular citizen, I'm going to say for city council members. City council members need to understand this stuff. And sometimes if the reports can consolidate some things and track them as projects or line items or functions, that would be more useful. I'm going to say I looked at the documents from your last meeting, and there was a place where I could not track the through line. I could not understand the conclusions. And so for me, that would be really helpful. And I'm not the only person in the city who should care about this or be able to read it. If it was more accessible, I think more people would be able to use it. And it's a hugely valuable thing that you're doing. That was kind of basically all I wanted to say was thanks very much. And I appreciate your work and looking forward to an output to council that the regular citizen is going to be able to read, you know, who voted for the tax, who can see the results of the tax, who understand what happened in the first year, who understand what, you know, we're going to be urging in the next coming years. Thank you so much for doing this.
All right, the next item on our agenda is general business, and really the main discussion point we have this evening is the memo that Julie Radulovich drafted, and I hope everyone has a copy available. I do have some printed copies if you would like it, in case you weren't able to bring that along, but I think I would like to open up the discussion to you and talk about that memo. Can I steal a hard copy? File.
Just so I have something to write on. I'm sorry, I didn't.
Files here.
Can I get a copy?
Anybody else need?
I got one on my phone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One more?
All right, one.
Thank you.
Firebug.
What's that?
Do you have any spare?
I'll get you one. Yeah. So I think just discuss amongst yourselves, and if there's any questions that we can have, I have Brent and Kathleen here. Brent Thompson is our city engineer, And I know Brent Sutherland was here last time and he was unable to make it, so Brent's here to answer any questions that you might have on the projects.
Did you get my recommendation?
I did, so I'm happy to share that with the group. So Peter did have a recommendation. Patrick, sorry.
Okay, happens all the
Our
time.
auditors, Peter on my mind.
I thought the memo was good. I think it covers a lot of, hits all the points we really need to hit for council. I just had suggested a third bullet on the additional comments that would summarize, the second bullet on the second page is under additional comments, summarizes the spending 2023. And I thought it would be helpful for decision makers like council to have another bullet there that shows what the 2024 sort of the big top items were, just so they can see where the 2024 budget, which we've seen, which was in our spreadsheet. I didn't know, Tiffany, is council gonna get that
The
same packet that we had?
Yes, I believe that's what we did last year.
Given that,
if I
it's just,
recall.
in a council meeting, it's such a lot going on and you don't have time to digest that much. I thought we should just kind of give it a quick overview, and they were the big ticket items. 13.9 million for the Bellevue Service Center. I don't know how you can share.
Yeah,
We don't have to bring it up on screen. I can.
yeah.
I think on that third bullet, we should just focus on 2024 instead of the kind of the next 10 years.
Yes, rather than, the 10-year one would be more complicated to summarize. And I think that council will have a chance to adjust or think about priorities in 2025, but they should know what's what we've kind of planned to do with the money. And I think it's helpful for the public too, to see, well, we did 2023 spending and that was this, and 2024 revenues are gonna be this, and they are largely allocated to these 5 items. I know if I was on the dais, I would. I think, Tiffany, your spreadsheet is really useful, but it does describe things in kind of, it can be a bit obtuse to know what some of those things are on the line items, and this was a way to, let me get my language up here.
Yeah.
They were, there it is.
I kind of shared it here, but, so the recommendation was to add a third bullet that says 2024 spending of 34 million anticipates the following allocations. 13.9 Public Works Building Campus, 10 million downtown streetscape, 8 million street maintenance, 2 million fleet equipment and IT, and 1 million overhead. So that was kind of the recommendation to add that.
And if you sum those, that pretty much comes to the, there are small bits and pieces in there that are not covered in these numbers, but that really takes all of the big over $1 million items there. So that was just my recommendation, just put that in there.
I do kind of like it because it says to people, there's a plan and here's what the focus is, so.
Good. Yeah.
Can you clarify where you wanted it? You wanted in the additional comments, right?
Right, so it'd follow the second bullet. So the first bullet is commending staff, second is 2023 budget spending with this, and this would be the third bullet then saying 2024 spending anticipates this. Because I don't know if these will actually happen, but this is our anticipated outlays.
And I know council will be considering their strategic plan, which plans out to 2027 at their next study session. They'll be looking at that. So that does line up really nicely with how they're starting to think through projects, initiatives.
You can see what
There's
money's
a lot of
coming from.
parallel with that. So
Whatever else.
that'll feel really helpful for them as well.
So change like the third bullet point that we currently have just to focus on 2024.
So that's what you're suggesting is
Yes,
eliminate
so maybe-
eliminate the long-term 10-year and just do the.
Leave
Yeah,
that,
do
you could
24.
say long-term, the 10-year projected budget spending of X is for these other things. But those are speculative in the largest degree. They're in there, but we don't know what 10 years from now what they'll really be. But I think you could leave, I'm not saying we're removing that. I would just say the
Add it
10-year,
before, maybe.
add it before it, and then say long-term budgeting spending of 136 million. there's a lot of qualifiers you'd want to use in that. We don't know what the actual revenues are gonna be, we don't know what priorities are gonna shift. Those are harder to characterize, but the 2024 one I thought was pretty characterizable.
I actually think you should stop out and get rid of the 24 through 31, because it's unlikely that the 24 through 31 will change next year, or the year after, the year after.
Highly likely. it would
They're
change.
very generic categories. So every
I see.
year, you're gonna contain the same text. It's unlikely that any of those generically defined categories are ever gonna change, so it almost becomes not useful.
I like the idea of just changing that third bullet point just to the 2024 with what you're saying.
Okay,
I think it, I think it just kind of looks, yes, we know kind of near future, here's what the plan is. So like, as me as a general citizen looking at it, it's like, this is kind of like what I would expect to see over the next year of, so.
Do you think there would be any suggestion to add maybe 24 and 25? Because that's kind of near term as well, adding 2025, just a thought.
That would just kind of show like a table of numbers.
I guess my question is how solid are the 2025 allocations?
Less solid than 24.
And 26.
Probably a little squishy.
Pretty 2025 squishy?
Maybe a little squishy.
They looked like they were intended to happen. I guess I wish I had can bring it up, I guess. I didn't really look closely at that 2025 column. Is it clear and articulatable and in neat?
So if we look at the plan. So in 2025, we have not. I guess there's really not a lot of large projects. I
Right,
think
there's-
24 captures the two largest ones, which are downtown streetscape. So maybe there's not any.
It's harder to say what other things are gonna be in there.
Okay.
And
strike that.
I do feel like the downtown streetscape one is kind of a question mark where there's a lot of moving pieces in Project Downtown right now. We are tentatively allocating 10 million for 2024, but I suspect that there will be more rejiggering by council about, I was listening to the study session, exactly how they're gonna phase it, where the source of the money is gonna come from, what Denver Water share, all of these things are now in play in a weird way, a less clear way.
Well, I think, the Denver Water Project is separate.
Yeah, but their
Project
contribution
Downtown,
to they're not gonna do it now, but there was,
No, I don't think that was ever an actual.
no, that was always just
Um,
wishful thinking.
Maybe folklore, I'm not sure.
Folklore.
But,
Dang.
like, or yeah, wishful thinking.
It's a bit of
is
wishful
probably
thinking.
right. But, I think as we move forward with the concept and council consider that final concept, September 3rd is when the plan is for them to adopt that. So it'll be in advance of the budget. So I think it will,
No.
and the intention then is to move directly into design and construction in 26. So.
Yeah, that's why I say 24 is a little squishy, but we want to earmark the funds in 2024. We know we're gonna need them, and we know we're gonna start on the project in 2024. So we just wanted to make sure that we have that appropriated and available.
Though it seems unlikely they'll spend 10 million in 2024, but that's the allocated space and room, and maybe they will. But 2025, I didn't even see Project Downtown Streetscape in 2025, it doesn't even have a line item. Not in the version I have, it may have been updated.
Yeah, and I think that again is, we wanted to allocate the funds in 2024 for the project, the full funds, knowing that it's gonna probably cross years. When the actual construction starts.
I think it makes sense to focus 1 year at a time.
Yeah.
Sort of here's what we did in last year, here's what we're projecting next year. And you can there's always gonna be
It gets fuzzier.
It
as
does.
we go forward. And we're really beginning to get into the realm of speculation in 2025 and certainly in 2026. So it might be best not to present those numbers to council, 2025, because it looks maybe more definite than it really is.
Yeah.
They'll be able to look at that. So I kind of agree with Jake that maybe we should move away from characterizing the long You're gonna, they're gonna have all this information anyway, so if they have questions about, what's
Yeah.
5 years from now, we can go through that. So that was just one suggestion I had.
I think from my perspective, I know it's gonna be squishy, and I know we've got this runway of, getting the first year behind us of fees and the planning it takes to get things moving. I think a lot of us feel like, it just happens like this, and I know that's not what happens, but I think for me, what I kind of look at is like, really, are they spending the money or are they sitting on it, right? And so for me, it's, if we're saying, however much million sitting in 17.7, yeah. We're gonna be spending 36, it's like, we're gonna start, the momentum is happening, and that's really gonna start, it may not happen the first half of 24, but we're gonna start, we have the plans for it, so I think that for me, from a citizen perspective, that's important to know of like, hey, we're just kind of being chintzy, and we're gonna spend 500K on streets and that's it, we're just gonna hoard, right? But, just assuming maybe the average look at it is like, why aren't you guys spending that money? So.
And I think it's interesting, like something like Project Downtown, it's been so long since we've done a project where you live in that sort of vision concept and you actually take it to design, to construct. So I think that's just a really great opportunity for people to see that, like how you have
The
to,
progression.
right, and to pay cash for it. Like that's different than how people do those big transformative projects. So this will be, if that 10 million, knowing that on the front end that that's secure, then that makes the design and construction.
Yeah, we're serious about the
You can
project.
have- Well, and you can also right size
Mhm.
because you could spend, wild amounts of money in transforming a downtown.
I think the thing that's interesting is when we look at that list that you put together. From my perspective, we've seen and heard a lot about downtown, right? With all the meetings and surveys and stuff that's out there. I think it's interesting that I would say a lot of people probably don't know about public service, or the, sorry.
Campus.
I think I've got Excel on my brain, that campus and what's going on there.
Exactly.
So when you see this like large number on there, it's
The
like,
top figure, yeah.
it's like, wow, what is this? But, I think a lot of that kind of comes with communication and read some stuff about it. One of the big things, coming, can't remember what the term is, but.
Well, and I know it was a big conversation of like the deferred maintenance on facilities was a big component of how, we talked in the early stages of how do we start to think about a capital fund? So I know when I arrived at the city, our balance was, I think, $700.
On our 5-year plan, yes.
That's a good seed fund.
And then it grew to 2,100, so we're on the right trajectory, but, so, I mean, the generosity of voters to say, I see your vision and I'll fund that, but I don't know, that's a great point of being able to communicate a little bit more on that, because there are plenty of people that said yes, but have forgotten.
Yeah.
About that piece of it.
I mean, I like the communications that have been going on with it. I mean, my main communication is looking at the Littleton report. So, occasionally I'll go online, but just as much as we can tell the community, hey, here's the cool things that we're doing. I mean, we talked a lot about that last year.
Yeah, I
And
think
it's
we-
starting and continuing, but.
Yeah, and we did contract with an outside source to help get that communication out, so I feel like we're definitely on the right track. And you've seen some of that out there.
Yeah.
And I know Brent and his team are working on a dashboard to sort of start to track progress of, so I think you're set to debut that to council
End of the month.
end of the month.
Yep.
So I think, like trying to find those tools, because some people like a dashboard that kind of shows progress and there's like narrative and it tells the story. So trying to make sure we have all the tools.
The dashboard will be shown on the website with regard to the, I was on it the other day, what do you call it?
The big things.
The big things, it's in that area.
It'll be in that
It'll
area.
be in that area.
So it'll be an interactive GIS dashboard. So you can see the project and click on it and get to know more about what it is and what's going on and budget.
That's great.
Yeah, I think we're like our ability to grow the GIS component of that storytelling, like even with Project Downtown doing those story maps and like sort of grounding, because there is something maps.
Yeah, I would say.
You know, like
if
it
you could
just
give
grabs you.
visuals, especially on the
Yeah.
website with those, I'm assuming that the citizens would really enjoy that. You would kind of see where things are going, they could play, then, oh, now I know, okay.
I feel like I was on the website probably a week or two ago. And I don't know if I was on the big things. I kind of had to navigate it to look at projects, but I really like seeing that map of like where the work was going on. Cause I was looking at my mom's neighborhood she got a letter in the mail saying, we're gonna be working on your street. And so,
Trees.
yeah, just get it ready, people, right? But it was nice to see that of like, hey, this is what's going on and who the project manager is. And it was nice to have all that detail behind it. So I don't know if that's part of where I mistakenly hit the big things, but I really appreciated seeing that and the data behind it. And then I also like seeing the click it or fix it, the click fix, to see kind of, hey, here's what's people have been reporting and what we're addressing.
So I have a few thoughts, coming out from a slightly different direction. The conversation I had with the city council like a year ago was to come in and, you know, work on this and not rubber stamp anything. And quite frankly, this looks a little bit like a rubber stamp. But that's not what happened last meeting. Like we dug really deep into this. And I don't know that we accurately portray that. It's a lot of great information. I love the information, but if someone's to pick this up, they wouldn't most likely walk away with this understanding that, you know, we really, you answered like 100 questions, maybe 150, I don't know, a lot, you know, and you went into great detail. It's like we scrubbed everything. And maybe it doesn't go here, but I think we need to convey that so that others understand that the due diligence was done. And like, I have a lot of confidence that the people that are on the staff are doing what's right for the community. And there's a lot of discipline around that, the things that are coming and stuff. But, you know, like the project, you know, you mentioned Julie a little bit, like I've heard a lot of people refer to that as the Taj Mahal that's being built. And that's nothing like what's going on, you know, when you explain it to us, walk through, hey, it's a huge, there's a huge safety need there, the buildings are old and stuff like that. That's not understood by a lot of people, you know, but when you walked us through it, and the other gentleman did as well, it's like, wow, we really need to do that, you know, but I just don't hear that many people that understand what they should be able to go to the website, granted, and follow these things and stuff and take that away. But I just keep kind of coming back to like, if someone picks this up, they may not walk away with the right impression, based on the work that we did last meeting and stuff. I'm not really sure what to do with that necessarily, but kind of stuck there.
So you're saying to try to find a way to like socialize it more outwardly of these are projects that are forthcoming, like.
Well, I think they're doing that. We could certainly speak to like, hey, there's some things coming. But I'm really speaking to like, we're pretty high level as we should be, but like, we went through like line by line by line and asked so many questions, you know, and you answered every one of them. And I said this to city council last year, like every time I'm around the staff and they explain things more, they get better. It's just like they go a level deeper. It's like, wow, that's great, you know, and then you go a level deeper, you know, and there's other scenarios with organizations where the deeper you go, the more you're like, oh, you know, I have a serious concern here. But that's the opposite of like working with the staff. And here it's like, wow, I'm glad you're really on top of that, you know, and then you explain more. It's like, wow, that's pretty awesome, you know. So I just would hope that other people would have that opportunity, whether it's just us talking to the city council or whatever, to see, you know, what we get to see by spending time with you, you know, and really going through the detail. I mean, you're in the audit world and stuff and see that every day. You know what I'm kind of getting at, or?
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. Because yeah, if you were just to look at this, you don't know the level of discussion. The way I guess I look at it is, you know, we've got our committee charter of what we're set to do. You know, and as part of being members of that committee, having the discussion with the right people on staff, right, of what's happening and being able to say, yes, you know, we feel comfortable that the funds were spent in accordance. I don't know to what level is the right level. I mean, because we don't want to say we've audited it, right, because we haven't. You know, we
don't have a say in the prioritization of things. We don't
No.
decide. We don't weigh in on the value or priorities of what's presented. It's just making sure. I think your point is well taken, that it may not be absolutely clear that we've hashed through whether things conformed and are aligned with the bills, the PA's, the measures, requirements, and we did hash through a lot of them. And Julie's language under additional comments hints at it, that we commend the staff for continuing to provide careful planning, prioritization, and context for future spending of 3A funds, which is, that's the question and answer, is that context generation that happened at this committee. We've been explained what those funds, those allocations and spending patterns represent. I mean, maybe that sentence could be strengthened in some way. This is why you gotta write these suggested sentences for early and send them in so we can, language is hard to do in the middle of a committee meeting.
One thing you could maybe add to that section too is maybe you could even say, you know, we reviewed 20+ projects with staff and discussed them individually and, you know, understood them as best we could, or, you know, something like that, to kind of share the depth that you went through in the first meeting, maybe expand on it a little bit.
That'd be pretty good language to me.
Something.
do we want to put that on the front under the executive summary, you think? To have it in front there?
Do you feel like, when you're presenting this to council, you can add?
Yeah, I'm happy to.
Verbally sort of say, look, this is punchy, these are bullet points. But we spent, you know, a lot of time digging through this and maybe provide that context at the dais.
Another way to do it.
And there was a lot of discussion like that at the last meeting,
was.
even though we didn't spend very much, but we did talk about future projects. At length. So yeah, there was some definite conversation on that last meeting.
I like the fact that we've got different representation from the different boards and commissions, because there's different things touching transportation, or, you know, the planning committees probably sees the bulk of it from the rest of our groups, but, you know, seeing kind of, everybody's got some involvement in a bit of like, yeah, you know, I kind of understand this, see this, feel this, so it's not like, you know, I guess I don't look at it kind of like a rubber stamp with, you've got two outside community members, you and me, and then all these other individuals that are kind of deeper into their wheelhouse of kind of saying, yes, makes sense, or here's things to, you know, consider, but yeah, I think that's something we could definitely talk to them about at the meeting, so. But I can add something out there. I kind of feel like it makes sense maybe on their executive summary, so it's kind of right there in the front of, you know, so maybe after we reviewed the income statement, you know, like maybe after the second bullet point, put in a third bullet point saying, you know, we spent time kind of walking through all the projects that had, you know, work done during the year, and then also walk through the projects that are planned for the future, to understand that kind of here's where we're at today, knowing that, hey, we've got some funds, we're going to continue to get funds, kind of where we're at. So I can throw them together like that.
Keep it brief.
Yeah, keep it brief.
Like you, the other ones, nice and
Okay.
simple.
That feels like it's
Okay.
Tangential to that, I mean, I think what was interesting to me about this, the conversation last week, I mean, I had questions about some of the decisions about some of the spending, and that was part of the difficult back and forth that we go through on this committee about this committee doesn't decide priorities or choose projects in any way. It just evaluates whether they conform to the language. And you can arguably say anything that we talked about. Everything that's been done and spent conforms, but it really is left to the political leadership and staff to decide where priorities go. So to that end, I listened to last week's council study session and the Environmental Stewardship Board presentation talked a lot about how 3A is as a measure, one of the measures features was that sustainability, environmental stewardship, the funds would be used for that. And we really don't have anything significant in last year's or next year's spending on that. There is that kind of, I'm not sure that it was just everything was hunky-dory. I think even in this committee, there was a sense that there are some challenges and opportunities that need to be met. And I think I think that one of the recommendations we might want to make under the recommendations is that the ESB have a voice here as well. So that voice and that thought on analyzing these funds is here. So, or maybe the new sustainability officer. I think we're going to do a hire soon. City's going to pick up a new sustainability. Maybe that person will be their staff person to be at the table here to sort of talk about how these Steve Barr and Kyle both mentioned that they wanted to see 3A monies steered towards sustainability measures. And both Jim Becklenberg and the city attorney said, yes, in fact, the measure does provide for that. And that's, to me, that was one of the missing pieces. And I was kind of raising that a little bit about watering the medians and some of the way that projects were chosen. So those are some voices. So I just would say that is maybe an additional recommendation we have that the city explore, maybe bring in environmental sustainability board member or staff or both to this committee, because they choose who the seats are on the committee. I don't know if we want to make that recommendation this year. I mean, it was just something I thought of, and it's related to that hashing we did last week over some of these outlays and where they're going and how those priorities are set. Council really does need to, I see our role as helping citizens and council see the big picture of where 3A money is going and understand the why and the where of it. And the first piece of that is knowing what the monies are and where they're going. So that's what those lists of where we're spending next year come from. But there is a larger question of like, how do we choose the projects and are there better ways to do those allocations? And is that our role to kind of say, well, this could have been better spent or more sustainably? No, I don't think it is. But I think we want to make sure that council knows that they should be getting in there with their own voices if they want things like sustainability to drive it. I mean, I don't know, when I see a line item like fleet purchases, and did we talk about this today? There's a $700,000 fleet line. And are we doing, fleet electrification and all the good things the ESB board members would want us to do? They don't want to see any more gas powered lawnmowers, not to mention trucks doing snowplows. But is that our voice? Is that our role? I don't know. I don't think so. But I do think that 3A is meant to help the city get to places like that. And a good stewardship committee would be raising those questions and say, long-term, atmospherically, pollution, noise level, ESB's recommendation to the city, those priorities, 3A was supposed to meet those needs too in its funds. And where is that spending? So I don't know. I know that's very long-winded. I'm sorry.
I'm right there with you. A year ago, like, we talked about a lot of that, we were getting into electric vehicles and the staff was like telling us all about these things, that they're like really passionate about. And then you come in, I like this guy, like what we were talking about.
Well, I'm sorry I'm new and
No. But we were talking about a year ago, and I think we were walking away. It was like, hey, you guys be more transparent, about what you're thinking there and the direction going and stuff, but I think you're spot on with
I do envision council spending a lot of time talking about capital this year and every year going forward, especially for reasons that you're mentioning. That board is a new board for the city, and so I'm sure they have a lot of ideas and thoughts that they want to share, and council too. So yeah, I do know that council is going to be focusing a lot on capital.
I would anticipate a much more robust conversation. I mean, you're right at that perfect time. I mean, it does take a while to have the resources that then you have to sort of pick and choose. So you're exactly right, though. They won't relinquish that. They'll still do the picking and choosing prioritization. So they will ask you to say, like, are we still staying in line and conforming with the language? And that's really the role here. But I do think we've now reached a point where that is something that we're working towards as staff, and I know that it's good to talk about.
I think I would feel better, speaking to citizens and voters as a 3A committee member, knowing that, things like that are in the pipeline and that we are gonna consider, sustainability issues in 3A spending. Like that is part of the measure, and I think a lot of citizens here care a lot about that issue and wanna see that rolled into some of the projects and choices that cities make. I know we're not deciding those things, but I would feel better knowing that as a committee steward of how you can see.
Well, and as you think about that addition for the committee with the, with recommending that, I think you could provide some flexibility. That is that in next year's committee or within, by 2026. So I
Do you think we should make that one of our formal recommendations? We have a little bullet point about recommendations.
I don't think it would hurt.
Yeah, I think.
It's a
Let's
positive.
put a second, we only have one, so we could put a second. Council should consider including ESB board members and or sustainability officer in future committee makeup. It's something they have to decide. They decide who gets a seat here, but I do think that since the measure, according to the attorney and Jim said, the measure does mention that
Yeah, it does.
part, it's part of what the voters enacted. They should probably have that seat. And then it's a new committee, so.
Yeah.
But I was really impressed with the voices from that committee. I think there's a lot of really smart people there. It'd be great to have them in this mix.
It's just nice to talk about ideas, stimulate conversation.
So that was just maybe one additional bullet recommendation. My guess is council probably would do it anyway. If we put it in our list.
We can just say, we told you so.
There were some pretty strong, yeah, we can say.
We'll let you take credit for that.
It's all right.
So the project tracker that you guys have, that you're gonna be rolling out, if I understand it, it's kind of like with the budget, the big packet included, like that one pager or something, you're starting to get at that type. With that, do you envision that including some of these sustainability projects and like, does it get into like kind of ranking or like, here's the top 10 we're working on, or what are you guys thinking there?
Ultimately, that is the goal, to be that transparent in terms of the ranking of the multitude of projects that we have under consideration and looking at the 5-year and the 10-year plan even. We're not there yet, but certainly that is the goal.
Brent, who decides the ranking?
The staff committee.
Okay, so there's an internal staff committee that sets the priorities of DPW infrastructure capital projects.
And it's representatives from almost every department in the city that has capital projects.
Do those get taken to council for review at some point?
It's part of the budget
part
process.
of the budget.
Yeah, so we gather all the projects and I talked about the capital committee, the internal city capital committee, that's what we're talking about. And so we'll get a list of all the projects and the intention is to present it to council during the budget process. And that's what we've kind of done in the past, but we've talked about having a more robust conversation about that this year and going forward. And so, yeah, we'll present that to council and it's kind of like a staff recommendation.
And that's just the global list of all the things that are gonna go on. It isn't broken out by like 3A projects versus general fund funded projects. It's just really the
It
wish
will be,
list.
yes, it is. It
Oh,
is.
okay, so-
Yeah, we have to identify the funding for our purposes, for finance and for public works. So we do have funding identified.
And I think to add to that, there's very few projects that exclusively have one funding source. It's usually a multitude of funding sources to get to the end result, so.
It's complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think if you move forward on your ESB recommendation, their staff is coming back, sort of revisiting the plan that they presented last week on June 4th. then you're in front of council on June 11th. So I think your timing is pretty good, like that'll resonate. Especially here, kind of some of where those priorities.
Tiffany, do you feel like, when we talked last time, some of the gap between what was budgeted in 23 and what was spent was due to a staffing bottleneck? I know there's a staffing line item in 24. Do you feel reasonably confident that that's sufficient to open that bottleneck, or is that something else that's worth touching on in the recommendation section?
Yeah, I think it's not just staffing. I think there's just a multitude of things that have just kind of played into that. Staffing is definitely one of them at all levels, I think. Also just trying to plan the projects, and we've got a lot in the pipeline that we've gotten grants, and so we're identifying the funding, and funding sources have been changing a little bit. And so I think that's part of it too. But we were able to add 29 people to the city's budget in 2024, and some of those are definitely in public works who are gonna help Brent and his team kind of keep those projects going, so that we really see the work that's being done and that you can see the work that we're doing. But planning is an issue, staffing was a concern. COVID changed staffing and everywhere, right, worldwide. And so we're challenged with those concerns too. So I think it was just a number of things, and you do touch on it in here on projects not being able to be completed. I think priorities kind of changed maybe a little bit too through the year. But I think there's some language in there that kind of touches on that.
Yeah, I think there's that second bullet point on his income comments.
Yeah.
I can change up that verbiage.
No, I think it explains why that didn't get done, but do we feel reasonably confident that we solved that problem?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many FTEs do we have that were closed in 2024 in public
In
works?
public works,
Yeah.
6, I believe.
It was quite a few of our 29. Police was the largest, and I think public works was right behind them.
And I think we've gotten better too at understanding the availability of the technical consulting side of it too. Cause that plays a role in
Outside.
timing, right? Like,
Yeah.
cause you can go through, we have now procurement rules that have a very defined process. So you can go through that process, but someone can still say, hey, I can get you started at the end of this year. You're like, no, we need to hit the ground running, right? So you do have to kind of negotiate the timeline on that too.
That's a
And
good point.
And I think we have a better understanding of that currently as we enter into some of those agreements than maybe we did previously. And 2020 was a huge variable for that outside support too. Cause I know that almost every project was delayed by months from just the availability.
Of
on-
the external
on-
resources.
Right, like, and not even in the capital space, like across the entire organization. that you're-
Procuring actual
Right, exactly.
hard goods, like traffic lights and stuff was
Yeah.
That too.
the lead time, right?
And Tiffany mentioned grants too. There's a significant portion of the 3A funds that are going into matching these grant funded projects. And we faced a lot of delays just on the approval side with various agencies that certainly weren't anticipated. So projects that we thought were actually going to go to construction last year just been delayed through the design and approval process.
Yeah, I think that part of how I interpret our role here is to make sure that the funds are being spent within the four corners of the ballot language, but the other part is to make sure the funds are being spent, to make sure they're not being warehoused. And I think that the voters for sure will give you leeway for a ramp. Because all of a sudden there's this, you went from $700 to $17 million, and that takes, we want to be good fiscal stewards, but at the same time, want to make sure the money is getting spent so that it's improving the projects that the voters think it is going to improve. So if you feel pretty good that no one knows what the future holds, but that some of the pressures that restricted that spending in 2023, through the ramp up, through some supply chain issues, through some staffing, some of that stuff has been addressed. I think then I think it's fine. If we're gonna be sitting in this position a year from today and there's gonna be another big gap between what was forecasted and what was actually spent, then I think it's worth considering another bullet point in the recommendation section of like, well, make sure you're not warehousing $10-12 million a year. in
Oh,
this
yeah.
fund. So if you feel like it's been addressed, then I don't know that we need to touch it, but I just want to make sure that we at least discuss that to make sure that that pressure, that the throttle point gets some relief.
Yeah.
And I think like a lot of it really touched on is articulating what's programmed. It's not necessarily that every dollar is spent, but dollars are programmed and accounted to be spent.
They're earmarked for something that might not happen until 25, 26. That's just sound fiscal management. If that's the case, great. If it's because, well, we don't have enough project managers, then maybe we have a conversation about don't let that bottleneck, cut your budget down to a third of what you thought it was gonna be.
I think we definitely are on the right track, and getting the money was first step, right? Voters approve this and let us have the funds, and then we start ramping up our staff to address and get those taken care of. Adding staff in 2024 is gonna help. Changing our procurement policy has an impact on that too, and so having that process down and moving forward is helping us get forward. I do think we're in the right track on that.
You're somewhat the dog that caught the car, right? Oh, no, now I got the car.
Yeah.
Really excited, we're wagging our tails. We really are, not chasing them, just wagging them.
Any other changes you guys want?
I am curious, like from you guys' point of view, is there anything we haven't done, that we could help you with, or as we go through the cycle and closing out and going to city council, anything you need from us?
I mean, I really appreciate the conversation tonight because I wasn't able to join the last meeting, and I know my counterpart in the city manager's office, Mike Gent, was here. So even just the talking points, and I think that just lends so much credibility to the memo. So I think just bringing all of that to the council presentation just gives them a lot of confidence that this has been looked at very thoroughly. And when I heard you talking about that, like it is almost that rigor that you went in and how deeply you dove into all of those details. So I really appreciated hearing that, and I know council would too.
Okay, so then on the memo, the changes we're gonna make on executive summary, we'll add some brief verbiage about kind of the discussion around the projects. And then on the additional comments, third bullet point, we'll add the more spending verbiage. Tiffany, can you email that to me? And then we'll keep the existing third bullet point, and we'll just say long-term budgeted spending of blah, blah, blah is expected to focus on, just keep that for now. And then we'll add another bullet point talking about recommendation of somebody from the ESB board being added to the committee in the future. Does that sound good to everybody?
Sounds great.
Very good.
Okay.
You got it.
So then when we present at city council, who wants to present? Who would like to be there?
I'm happy to help you,
Okay.
not with the financial auditing.
I want okay, so how much, what part of the meeting will we be at? I know. And then how much time would you recommend we spend on it? Just kind of walk through the memo like we did last year and then just see what questions they have for us, or?
So right now, the item is scheduled with 30 minutes.
Okay.
And then it's the second item on the agenda, June 11th,
Okay.
study session. So that's the sort of large square table set up with.
Oh, it's a study session we're presenting at, not a
Study
meeting. Okay.
session.
Okay.
And then the item before you is they're members of Arapahoe County coming to talk about some of their budget challenges.
Okay.
So that is scheduled for 30 minutes. That one might be longer.
Okay. I know we were kind of late last year, weren't we?
Yeah.
We were like 10:30.
Hours.
Crazy.
There is
9 or 9.
There is an update on Safer Streets Littleton that follows you.
Safer
so-
Streets, okay.
So I think they'll try and manage the time on the front end, so.
Okay.
I think if you can stay within that 30 minutes, that's much appreciated, and we'll provide that same guidance to the county. Cause that item after for Safer Streets Littleton is imagined at 45 minutes, so a little bit.
Not a lot of outside, people at that.
Gotcha.
Yes.
That's good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you'll get more visibility there too.
Yeah.
How do you want to split up the memo?
I'm happy to talk more about the comments and the deep dive we did and stuff
Okay.
like that, if that's okay.
Yeah, so maybe what I do is just kind of run through the memo. And then you can add kind of at the end of the memo, just really kind of commentary, or as we're running through maybe the additional comments, just throw a bunch of commentary in there. Cause I think executive summary, how funds were spent, expenditures, recommendations are kind of part of the things we have to touch on through the charter. And then if you wanna just take the additional comments and just run through those and add your commentary, do you think that's that okay with you?
That's good.
okay? All right, does anybody else wanna show up that night? Show us on,
If I
commentary?
can, I will certainly show
I
up.
think I'm planning on being.
No,
No promises.
I know you guys have enough going on in your plate, so.
Hang out in the peanut gallery.
Yeah.
Since we're bored, do we need to formally move to approve? Memo subject to the,
Changes discussed?
yeah.
I would
Protocol.
say the city clerk would say as an official action, yes.
Probably.
I so move to approve the memo, subject to the provisions that we discussed.
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
All right, we have one other item on our agenda, and that is any other discussion that you would like to have? Hearing none, I will thank you for all of your help this year, and I look forward to meeting with you next year. And feel free to reach out to any of us anytime if you have any questions. And I appreciate you being here, and thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you guys for all your work. Appreciate it.
All right, we are adjourned.